Right. Well, good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome this morning to our first edition of our socially distanced 11/11 celebration, 11/11 downtown. I'm Tom McDermott, one of the associate pastors here, and I'm just going to make sure that we're all kind of cleaned up here at the table.
Yeah.
We didn't really do that right beforehand.
Good job there.
We're so glad that you're joining us. For those of y'all who are listening on audioly and don't have it done visually, you can always remember just to go to 1111. You can go to myfumc.org/live, and then you'll find the buttons there to get on. You can pass that along to your friends as well as they need to know. We're just glad that you're here and glad to be a part of it. And I'm here with sort of a skeleton crew. I've got Charme, Robarts here with me, and then Brad Thompson and Todd Franks, and then Elena Gunter have joined us, and we're going to try to throw together the band as often as we can and as many as we can in here and give you something special for these next couple of Sundays. And then we have Allie and Ian on Blair. We have Allie and Blair back in the sound board, and Blair's worked with us before, but Allie, this is her first time, so this is great because this is going to be a whole adventure for her, and we're really glad that she's been so cooperative in working with us here. We're back in Wesley Hall at First United Methodist Church instead of over at the Center for Transforming Lives, and we'll be for the next couple of weeks, and so it's just great to have you joining us this morning. I'm going to move this out of the way.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you're joining us. A little different format, as Tom has already said. It's pretty empty in the whole church building. There's probably 15 of us. However, we have the lovely Genevieve sitting over here cheering us on, and David and Ron, and so we're going to look alive as we can. But I'm really glad you decided to join us. As you know, what we're doing is what the city and others across the nation are doing to just try to take care of each other. We're doing this because we love each other. So we're going to distance as much as we can, but we're going to provide this video for you today and the next week. And so thanks for being here.
Yeah, and we didn't do this out of a reactionaryism or some people kind of feel like this might be overreacting or it might be a little bit scary. I mean, really, if the majority of us, if we are infected at all with this virus, will only experience minor symptoms. But the reality is there are a good number of people at risk, as you know. And as a congregation, we felt it responsible and an act of love and compassion for not just our family here at the church in 1111, but also for our extended family in the community. So we're not sure how long this is going to be going on. We're looking at a couple of weeks, but we'll keep everybody informed and keep connected with you all as we. And Charme, what are you doing?
Hang on a second.
Okay,
wait. Hey,
okay.
We can't sign in online, y'all. You
wow.
can't register your attendance right here.
So they could tell us that they're actually watching.
Absolutely. And you know what? Okay, so let me tell you how to get there. Go to the website, click on the worship tab. On the left side, you're going to see a button that says live stream. Hopefully you're already there. But over there are some other great features, like you can take notes on all the important stuff you hear today as we share fun stories and inspiring things about how faith hits the ground. Take notes. And you alone will see those notes. They're not going public or anything. But also, you can donate online. You can also put your check in the mail, but donating online gives you a sense of power because it goes whoosh, and there it is. Right. We like that little feature. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, all right. I'd forgotten all
there
about
you go.
that. That's
Okay.
excellent. Yeah, and so while you're doing that, I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit of what's going to be happening around here at the church this week. And just to kind of look at the schedule and,
I don't see anything.
Yeah, nothing's going to be happening at the church this week.
Nada.
No, we won't be. Charme and I and the other staff will be here. We'll be in the offices, but there really won't be a lot else happening here. But there will be online groups, and a lot of people are asking me, and maybe you too, about what kinds of things will be happening throughout the week with those groups that had been meeting here. A lot of them are going into an online format, so just check in with the web page. There's going to be instructions on how to do that, and we hope you'll join in that way. And then we'll also be creating some opportunities for you to join in and participate with the 1111 community as well, as we sort of adjust to this temporary reality.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a great plan.
Okay, well,
we're glad that you're here. Let's begin.
Let's begin with the welcome candle, as we always do. As you see, the candle is lit. And so you can say it right there in your living room. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again. Well, in addition to, everything else we've already said, it's also raining outside, which often keeps us indoors waiting and watching for the sun. And so that's a good sort of entree to this next song that the band is going to do for us that sheds a little light on things.
There's a street in a river town, and on that street is Mary's house. By the house is a deep ravine, running there is a magic stream. Lapping over the sand and rocks, it runs the length of Mary's block. Another mile to the riverside, and 1,000 more to the ocean wide. Now down in that ravine one day, by the water Mary lay, put her hand in the shallow stream, and Mary had a magic dream. She imagined that inside her stirred all the waters of the earth, every puddle, every creek, and every one of the 7 seas. And she could feel the fishes roam in her fingers and her toes, and in her chest the Gulf Stream. Since her dream that day, people say that Mary changed. They sympathize when they suppose it must be strange to be the ocean. She senses when the salmon swim, hurricanes lick her skin, Asia tickles her left arm, and the moon above tugs her heart. Her front is day, her back is night. She recollects the dawn of life. Tidal waves run up her spine, and lightning tingles when it strikes. She could feel the fishes roam in her fingers and her toes, and in her chest the Gulf Stream. So it seems because of Mary's magic stream. Some will say that lakes and wells, even rain can cast a spell. And every water drop you ask tells a tale of oceans vast. Be careful when you take a drink.
There's magic in the kitchen sink.
Nice, so nice.
Yeah.
I know you guys couldn't see the screen like you usually do at church, but there's this great line, and Brad, you might have to help me, but I think it says, every raindrop tells a tale of oceans vast. So huge things from little things, and then magic in the kitchen sink.
Nice.
Amazing. Fun thing to think about right now. Well, we're going to keep our tradition. We're going to go ahead and do Kairos. And so for those of you watching who may not be familiar with this, Kairos is the time in between what just happened and what will happen. Of course, these moments are with us all the time, but sometimes you have to be intentional about that in-between moment. And so what we do is we breathe together. So I'm going to invite you to get real comfortable so that you can take some deep breaths with me. You want to put shoulders over hips, maybe lift your heart up. Make plenty of room for about 3 deep breaths, and then I'll say some more words. And as you continue to breathe, just think about the luxury of taking a deep breath. Such a great opportunity to calm ourselves, reset the brain, relax a little when we're feeling tense. We do this every week, And usually we're sitting side by side, and this week here it is different. But you know what? If you just imagine while you're taking those gentle breaths, just imagine the person that usually sits by you or across from you, the person that you wave to across the way. See them? We're all still breathing together, as usual. We're so thankful for every breath we take. Amen.
So Charme, it's been interesting, this whole experience of trying this new way of doing our community online. Mm-hmm. And in the last couple of days, I've seen crowds getting smaller and smaller in places. Linda and I did go out for her birthday on Friday night, and we ate in one corner of the restaurant because there were 12 other people, but they were all eating in the same spot, and they were all eating in basically the same area, so we just sort of moved a few tables away. And there was at first there almost felt like this kind of desperation because the crowds were small. I understand people are still they still have their businesses going, they still are gathering in small groups, and we can still do that carefully, right, and mindfully. But driving here this morning, oh my gosh, the highways were empty. Yeah. And in the parking lot, I parked right up next to the door.
Right next.
Just right next to the front door. Yeah, it's just, in the hallways here, it feels a little strange.
It does.
You know? But so I brought my, just to kind of help and keep my immune system going, I brought my coffee, my Mark Twain mug. When angry, count to 4. When very angry, go ahead and swear. Yeah. It's got all, thanks, Todd. Yeah.
Well.
It's got all sorts of wonderful things on here just from time to time. But I've got my own proprietary blend of echinacea tea with slippery elm bark in it and some menthol and then just some other helpful herbs. And so that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking?
Quarantini. Got my peace sign on here, though, made with a jalapeno pepper right here.
All right.
All right.
Why don't you go ahead and get us into the scripture reading this morning? Yeah.
So the reading today is from John chapter 10, verses 2 through 7, and then verse 10. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he has brought all of his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, for they will not run to him because they don't know the voice of a stranger. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly."
Thanks. Yeah, we're in this I Am Sayings series, and this is our third part of the series, and we're looking at this text where now in the Gospel of John, which is the unique gospel that has these 7 sayings that Jesus makes, is saying, I am the gate for the sheep. And a couple of images come to mind when I think about this text. And for one thing, in this particular time, I'm thinking of the way in which it feels more like doors are closing, more like windows are shutting down, more like we're having to be sort of enclosed as opposed to being out in the open where things do feel safe. And that, of course, was the role of the shepherd, was this idea of feeling safe and you could feel protected by the shepherd. I was in Ireland a few years back, and I remember as we were driving down a road in the Dingle Peninsula, we were coming along and the walls were just rock walls lined on both sides, 4 feet high, and about 30 yards ahead, we slowed down. We saw these rocks being tossed out from the side of the wall. We didn't see why. They just were being thrown out into the ground, and one by one until all of a sudden a sheep jumped through. Just one lone sheep, and I was like, how did, and then another sheep, and then another sheep, and about 30 sheep jumped through this rock wall where that had been broken open, and then the shepherd came in from behind and then replaced all the rocks back up there, and we slowed down, and we just kind of smiled because we had to stop.
Yeah.
Right? The sheep are in the road. What are you going to do?
Right.
So he passed by and he smiled, and I said, that was interesting. He said, it's a lot cheaper than an actual gate.
Oh.
So,
to think it.
you know, the improvisation, the slowing down, you just have to deal with what comes. And I think about this gate and this image of a pathway, and everything seems to be shutting down. And I was reminded of that passage where you often hear people say, "Oh well, where one door closes, another one will open."
Right,
You know,
right.
and what I tend to remember, what I tend to think of is what kind of a yes and. Well, yes, and what Alexander Graham Bell said is often sometimes we look so regrettably upon the closed doors that we fail to see that a door has already opened for us.
Yeah, I get you on that because like everybody else, I've been seeing all kinds of crazy behaviors online, you know. It goes without mentioning the toilet paper fiascos, but all kinds of other awful things, people fighting over food in the grocery stores. So you can get really, really focused on that and fail to pay attention to the good stuff that's always happening. For instance, I heard this wonderful story about a young woman's walking through a parking lot at a grocery store, and a car slows down, comes up close to her, rolls the window down with a button, not a roll, and speak to the young woman, and it's two elderly people, and they say to her, "We're sick. We don't need to go in the store where there's lots of crowds, and we're scared to go in there." And so they pushed a $100 bill out the window to this young woman and said, "Will you do our shopping for us?" Handed her a list. She said yes, and she told that story on video, and it went viral. Why is that? Because we love those stories.
Yeah.
And we got to tell those good stories.
And what was the Italian one?
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot to tell. I saw this very short video clip of people in Italy who are obviously having to stay inside. And so you see a picture of apartment buildings facing each other, and people have opened their windows and they're singing back and forth to each other, just bringing some joy in.
It really does, and the scene has the empty street, and yet there they are singing out, and it reminded Linda and I both that when we saw that of time maybe 4 years back when we were in San Francisco, and we were stuck on the Golden Gate Bridge. There had been a terrible accident on the other side of the bridge heading into the city. The traffic was just packed in both directions, actually, just because of the onlooker traffic. But we were stopped, and it was getting frustrating. It was 7 o'clock. You got this sense that people needed to be places. There were people that were dressed up, and we kept playing sort of tag with this small car on our right, four-door car. It looked like a Toyota or something. And the people were really nicely dressed, black tie, black gown, and younger adults. And they seemed really anxious. We couldn't help but notice just how anxious they seemed. And some people were honking their horns and getting frustrated. We came to a pretty much dead stop. And as we looked over just at an angle to this car with these 4 people in there, the 3 men and this 1 woman, they seemed to be talking to each other when all of a sudden the window, the sunroof opened up, and the woman stood up in her black gown and began to sing the most beautiful aria.
Oh my gosh.
She just began to sing, and then we noticed that the windows came down 2 cars over because there were 4 more people dressed in black tie and such. Their windows came down, and they began to join in their part. And it suddenly, we realized, and so did a lot of people around us, we were looking at an opera chorus that was not going to make their performance.
Yeah.
They were risking the possibility of just not even getting there, which is such a frustrating thing where our lives are just stopped. We don't have any choice. What do we do? One door closes. But it just reminded me that the doors are always open. You know, Psalm 139 is this beautiful psalm that many of us know that essentially says that no matter where we go, no matter where we find ourselves, we are in the presence of God. We are in the presence of the ground of being, the ground of love. And it is always with us. And yet we sometimes forget, right?
Yeah.
We sometimes get caught up in the anxiety.
Fixated on the wrong stuff.
Yeah. You know, Joseph Campbell has an interesting phrase that he says. He says that these moments in our lives are like thresholds. These doorways aren't really on either side. They're just an opportunity. But we have to make these conscious choices. We have to see the things that sometimes happen to us as invitations. And I think what Jesus is even saying here is that love was Jesus' life. His life was an example of loving one another, loving oneself, living in a compassionate way with the world around you. And this way of sort of seeing these challenges as an opportunity to step forward, to trust. There's a word, courage, right? We think of that as the opposite of fear, but you remember what the word courage means. If you look at the root word, it doesn't mean fearlessness, it means open-heartedness.
Yeah.
It means that willing to sort of take that risk open-heartedly and to move into it. And there's so many examples that we're already seeing of that.
Right, exactly.
And one of the things that that it made me think of is this song. And so I asked Elena if she would do this particular song, because I think it really does speak to that willingness to choose, to step through.
Yeah, great.
You say that in times like these, you're driven down to your knees, looking around and grieving what peace there was. You promised yourself you would work for a world of good, and look at you now, wondering what good it does. No lost hope, no violent point of view can erase all of the good you do. There's nothing as dark as night, but nothing so strong as light. And here is the choice, let it burn out or bright. In a world where the fear and force have buried the silent source, can you deny the need for a light like yours? No fast pace, no jaded attitude can erase all of the good you do. Someone has left his wrath on everything in his path, taking the wealth and leaving his trash behind. Will you be peace or pride? And can you at last decide? There's no one to fight, we are the same inside. So go home and get some rest. There's many more miles and tests, all about love. And what if it comes to be all that we have left? No dark place, no debt and no abuse can erase all of the good you do.
Wow,
Wow, that's nice.
that's great.
So what we're seeing this, Elena, like what you were seeing, this nothing that we do can erase the good that we can do. And we're seeing this in all sorts of ways, even in our own social distancing, our own social isolation, that people are choosing these paths of compassion and interconnectedness. And it reminded me that we're not just interconnected in this reality of this global pandemic. I mean, we are interconnected inextricably in this strange virus and in what can happen because of our actions. but yet we are also interconnected in looking for the good, in looking for the compassionate paths and windows that we see. And I was sharing with Charme earlier that I had just read a National Geographic email this morning that came out and said, you're stuck at home with your kids. Here are some things you can do with your kids who are normally socially active and engaged in so many ways. Here's a whole plan for you. And I just thought, how wonderful. National Geographic is doing that. And then I noticed magazines that are just offering their subscriptions right now, just opening online to be there for everyone to read for free for now and for an indefinite future. Just this willingness of people to reach out beyond their normal boundaries.
Yeah, and it's fun to tell the crazy things that are happening, but it's a lot more fun to tell these good stories. It really warms us to know that, the good you do, it's everywhere. So here's this poem. You all know I love Mary Oliver. Just see what you think about this. It kind of speaks to some of this to me. And she's so imaginative. Her whole teacher, she said, was the forest and then the rest of the natural world. So she asked, do stones feel? Do they love their life? Or does their patience drown out everything else? When I walk on the beach, I gather a few, white ones, dark ones, the multiple colors. Don't worry, I say. I'll bring you back, and I do. Is the tree as it rises delighted with its many branches, each one like a poem? Are the clouds glad to unburden their bundles of rain? Most of the world says, no, it's not possible. I refuse to think such a conclusion. Too terrible it would be to be wrong. I love that. I just think it's so imaginative, and it teaches us to ask questions of what can be, even of rocks and trees. Pretty cool. Mary Oliver, American poet.
What is that Mary Oliver says about sort of what's that, instructions for life? We've often used that in 1111.
Yeah. I was writing to Disciple Church this week just to provide a little word or two for them, and I was saying that when Jesus said, I'm the gate, we have to figure out what that means and what it means to walk into that gate. And I get some ideas sometimes from Mary Oliver again, who has in one of her poems instructions for life. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. That, to me, would lead us to an abundant life. But paying attention gets a little bit hard, as we've said so many times, because we fixate on the wrong things. Like yesterday, no, it was Friday. I was out in my yard hoeing up my weeds, and I'm telling you, if I got weeds this year, I'm hoeing, and I'm thinking, this is going to take longer than I thought. There's more dandelions here than I counted on. I'm thinking about all of that to the point that I almost missed the fact that the actual grass, the little green blades of grass, are starting to come out. If you just glance at everything, looks like weeds and yellow, but when you're down there, they're turning green again. Just have to pay attention, right? It made me stop and think.
Yeah, what was it she said? Mary Oliver also said, it must be a great disappointment to God if we are not at least dazzled 10 times a day.
Yeah.
And I think magic in the kitchen sink, I was thinking there's magic in our yards. There's magic in our neighborhood. My son and I were out yesterday. He surprised us. We're sort of in isolation. Linda's not been feeling really good, but he surprised us by coming over and blowing the leaves again. We have these oak trees, and they fall in the spring. Mm-hmm. They don't fall in the fall. And so 2 or 3 days ago, I literally had bagged up 14 bags of leaves from where they just fallen over the whole front yard, and painstakingly developed a whole technique and routine, and then I lined up the bags neatly so that no one would pass them by, and they'd get them out of there. They were in 3 rows of 4 with 2 on top, and it was just amazing. And the next day, those bags were gone, and the next day, the leaves were back. It was just crazy, covered up the whole porch, and then with the rain. And so he's out there blowing them with the blower, and I kind of had gone to the store to get some stuff, and I came back and was surprised to see him there. And as I'm talking to him, the postal carrier, who we see from inside sometimes, she was coming down. I think she's probably maybe in her 50s, and she had a big heavy satchel with parcels and little boxes and heavy envelopes, and then she had the regular mail bag on the other side. And so she comes down towards our house, and everybody's friendly now, right? I mean, we're all checking on one another, and she says, "So how are you doing?" And I said, "Well, doing really pretty good. How are you doing? And she's like, fine. And then she smiled and she said, weren't these leaves gone the other day? And I said, well, yeah, they were, and now they're back, you know. And I said, my son's trying to clear them out. And she said, yeah, but you know, we just take it a step at a time. We just try to sort of pay attention a little more than before, and life is good. It's going to be okay. And I said, yeah. And she walks down about 3 houses, and I'm still talking to my son, and I see her turn around, and she starts walking back, and she says, I have not delivered one parcel this whole 2 blocks. And so I smiled and laughed, and she went on down, and we saw her go back to all the houses at the next block and deliver all those parcels.
Oh, man.
And it's just, you know, it's just noticing the small things
Pay attention.
that we have with one another, the small opportunities to be
Yeah.
connected. I think really, as I kind of think about some closing thoughts, I think this is really what Jesus might have been suggesting as well in his time, but for our time too, is this possibility in these times of challenge and these times of anxiety that we become a part of this path of compassion, this way of Jesus, which was to be compassionate, to be courageous, to be open-hearted with one another rather than defensiveness, and maybe to even practice a kind of open-hearted curiosity so that we might engage in these moments and see them as windows, as thresholds, the way that Campbell would mention them. And to remember that we're grounded in love and grace so that even in uncertain times, all of us, even uncertain times, we pay attention to our breath. And we pay attention to our moments alone and with others, with curiosity and the possibility that each of these moments offer, because they provide us a gateway in connecting us with this river of grace that sort of runs through everything. Brad.
In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep, from the mountains of fame to the river so deep. I must be looking for something, something sacred I love. The river is wide, and it's too hard to cross. Even though I know the river is wide, I walk down every evening and stand on the shore, trying to cross it to the opposite side till I can find what it is I've been looking for. In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep, through the valley of fear, and the river so deep. I've been searching for something, something taking my soul, something I would never lose, something somebody stole. Yeah. I don't know how I go walking at night. Now I'm tired and I don't want to walk anymore. It doesn't take the rest of my life till I can find what it is I've been looking for. In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep, through the jungle of doubt, and the river so deep. I know I'm searching for something, something so undefined. It only be seen by the eyes of the blind. In the middle of the night, I'm not sure my life after this. God knows I've never been a spiritual man. I'm baptized by the Father, baby, to the river to find, to the promised land. In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep, through the desert of truth, and the river so deep. We all land in the ocean, we all start in the stream, carried along by the river of trees. In the middle of the night,
In the middle of it, I go walking 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 in the middle of it.
Good job, guys.
Nice, very nice. Thank you, Brad and Todd and Elena, for this music this morning. It was so inspiring. And Charme, and thank you all for joining us. And thank you for being with us, Zhenya.
And David and
David
Ron.
and Ron, yes. And then also to Allie and
Blair.
and Blair back in the back. And then, Melinda stepped in. Nice to have her with us, too. So we have a skeleton crowd here, but it's so nice that you're with us where you are, and I hope that you found this inspiring and maybe a little insightful and encouraging. As I was thinking through this, I came up with a benediction that I wrote. I'm not sure if we'll use this throughout this time that we have that is sort of social distance time, but it seemed to fit, and I hope it's helpful to you as we think through our connection with God and all of this time that we're in. We are in pieces, but we are not broken. We are separated, but we are not disconnected. We are in our own Sabbath spaces, but we are not alone. We are inextricably connected and interdependent in sickness and in health, in anxiety and in compassionate curiosity. So we take these words with us. Life is springing forth, song is bursting forth, while windows invite curiosity in the very backyard of our lives. Old objects and paintings and books beckon from within the home. There's laughter in cyberspace. There's magic in the kitchen sink.
So pay attention. Allow yourself the luxury of being astonished and tell us about it. Send your pictures, send your texts and emails.
We'll be around. Email us and keep in touch, and we'll see you next Sunday. Blessings.